pop up, and I thought this is worthy of you and I to have a discussion about. Rodney writes, do you think we have too high of expectations for JT? His performance last year was great. I feel coaches have had him dial it down on his running to stay healthy, utilize the talent around him. Seems to be working, but feels that fans are down on JT because they're used to seeing the big plays and flash he gave us last year. I think that's a little unfair because we need him to finish the season healthy. He can make plays with his legs, but we don't need him to unless it is necessary. I think that's a mixed bag in my opinion, Rodney. You said some things that I do agree with, but not everything. I would say that utilizing the talent around him, part of what you noted, is up and down. He hasn't always utilized the talent around him this year. He's gotten very specific with a couple of guys and ignored a few others, I think, that would help create a little bit more balance within this offense. I agree that he has not run nearly as frequently or when he's had the opportunity to, in large part because he's tried to stay healthy and he was dealing with an injury. So I think that is fair. I would also say that the expectations of Jordan Travis grew out of his exceptional play in the back end of last year, where he emerged, really not even just the back end. He started the year against LSU. He came out the gates and looked incredible last season in that game. He had transformed from a quarterback that was kind of a one-read guy that could really kill you with his legs and, if given the opportunity, could make a few throws, but not a guy that hit his back foot and came out on time and hit guys in stride and, really, found ways to make defenses have to defend the whole field. He emerged as that. And when he did that, it became a different realm. He became a guy that was in a different realm, I should say, of quarterback. So we came into the season thinking, well, that can only get better. He's bigger and stronger, and we provided more weapons around him than he had last year. So why wouldn't that improve? I don't think it's unfair to ask that a guy take the next step forward. He was a preseason Heisman candidate. And so I think the expectations were valid and fair. I don't think he's a Heisman candidate anymore. But I do think he can still be very, very good, and this team can have a special year, and it could be in large part because he plays well. So it's all still out there.
Yeah, I think this is a good solving for the future opportunity because how Mike and Jordan integrate moving forward is going to, I'm not saying they have a problem. It's just that the offense clearly looks different than it did last year. It clearly has different issues than it did last year, namely the offensive line, the ability to consistently run the ball.
Start there, yeah.
And then you can also look at Jordan's injury at Boston College, which is still prohibiting him from letting it loose and turning loose a little bit. So you've got a few things there, mostly on the ground, that are influencing the entirety of the offense, to where even though you feel better about your collection of receivers and pass-catching targets, it still is disjointed. So how does it all work? And I believe Rodney asked that question at the end of the interactive hour last night, and you said ask again tomorrow. So I think we got that done.
Good job, Rodney. Appreciate that.
This is going to be fascinating to watch because the answer is going to be novel. Like it's still an extension, I think, about the identity question. What do we want to be when push comes to shove? What Syracuse does is very different than what Virginia Tech does. Namely, they play defense and Virginia Tech does not. So what do you do with that? And with this specific set, do you look at the game plan and say, it worked last year? I know it's a different guy coaching the defense, but the 3-3-5 is the 3-3-5. Let's keep everything underneath and just march down the field. I wonder if they try to do that this year because last year's game was successful for a lot of reasons. Syracuse ineptitude on offense was one of them. But Jordan ran the ball effectively last year in that game. It was more than, I'm going to do it once to keep you honest. He ran the ball 3 or 4 times in that first half where you had to, if you're Syracuse, buy that if there is a read option, that he could keep it. And I don't know that defenses are at that point right now. So you've got to run him a little bit more. You want to see if they'll use more than just the primary 2 targets. And if Johnny's out this week, then certainly they have to. There's just a lot to sort out still. Even though the running game exploded last week, there's still a lot to sort out between what the offense needs to be and what the quarterback needs to do within it. It's going to be a fun thing to watch.
He's been less accurate on a lot of different types of throws this year, too, and that is, I think, maybe the byproduct of an injury. I don't know. Maybe that's the pressure he feels. I'm not real sure. forcing the ball some into areas that he doesn't need to. These are all criticisms that I think are fair. He hasn't been bad. I mean, I'm not telling you that he's been a bad quarterback. I just think he's capable of a lot more. In fact, we've seen him be better than he's been. So we're still waiting on it. You know, he kind of seems to be emblematic of the season, where it's the ups and downs of a game where we can't seem to sustain a lot.
So charting those numbers, and that's another reason why I was looking at the Syracuse underneath game plan. It's part of the piece that's going to be on warchant.com. But you would think that they've thrown it down the field, like deep shots, way more often this year. It is more often, but it's only about 3.5%, give or take. So it's not a ton more in terms of the downfield shots that we're taking relative to last year. And that may surprise you. But what shouldn't surprise you is that Jordan's accuracy on those throws has dropped 15%. He hit on 45% of those deep shots last year, and now it's down to 30.
Did you chart, Tom? Sorry, did you chart the throws in the middle of the field? Down the seam?
It's a wash. Now, if you're talking about left, right, middle, now I'd have to take a look at those numbers a little bit. But if you're just talking about depth, it's kind of a wash between.
Not depth. I'm looking at middle. I want to know the frequency with which that we attack the seam.
I mean, we could pull that up. I can go get it.
I mean, it's just not something that, with my eyes, I'm seeing nearly as often as we did a year ago. It doesn't feel that way to me.
I did some research on the question you asked during Solving for the Future.
I want to clarify the question because some in the chat have attempted to answer it as well. I'm not talking about completion percentages. I'm talking about frequency with which that area of the field is targeted. Correct.
And I used that implication, that inference from you. We're actually using the middle of the field more at the short and intermediate level.
Okay.
So 0 to 9 yards, 10 to 19 yards. I actually put it in your inbox too.
Yeah, so it's the big plays down the seam that we're not hitting at the same rate, not even close to the same rate that we did a year ago. That would make sense. That's why my eyes are telling me we're not seeing enough of those plays. The short underneath stuff we are hitting at a greater rate, to your point, and thank you for doing that research. You are correct, and I'll allow you to say what it is in just a moment. But the down the field big plays, of which we had a ton a year ago, in fact, over 40%, you're just not seeing this year. It's down at 30%. There's been 9 of them in total. 9.
I'm looking at the receiving grades page for the targets. I think this is what our complaint is more about than the section of the field, the third of the field.
Right.
The target breakdown so far this season is Johnny with 36, Keon with 33, Jaheim with 16, Lawrence Toafili with 12, and Kyle Morlock with 11. Those are the only guys with 10 or more targets on the team. And there are only 2 guys with 30 or more targets. Like the gulf between 2 and 3 is 33 and 16. So it's about the players that we're targeting. I think that the issue is with.
Yeah, the angst, yes. I mean, Destin Hills is a playmaker, is a star in the making, and he's not targeted, but what, twice?
Well, and that's, did you say Destin? 4 targets. 4.
Okay, 4 measly-ass targets.